What is up everyone, Boshi here back at it in Raid Shadow Legends, and we have a pretty crazy 10 times event popping up, so let's talk about it. Alrighty guys, so like I said, we do have a 10 times event popping up on Friday and running through the weekend. Now with all 10 times events, I will warn you guys about summoning, just because the chances of getting an epic or a Lego do not go up, just the chances of getting these specific champions if you happen to pull an epic or a Lego. So always make sure you're looking at your account and seeing if it's actually worth summoning during these events. Now with that said, there are some pretty crazy champions in this 10 times, along with the fact that there is a fusion going on and there's going to be a summons rush in order to get one of those additional epics from the fusion. So a lot of people are going to be summoning, and so I thought I might as well go over the champions and their kits and give you my thoughts on them. Like all review videos, I'll go ahead and leave content chapters down in the description below if you guys want to jump to a specific champion rather than hear me talk about every single one. But yeah, let's go ahead and just jump right into it. So the very first champion is going to be from the Bannerlords, and it's going to be the legendary support champion Sethallia. So on the A1 we have Put to Flame. Attack one enemy has a 50 or 60% chance if you book it of placing an HP burn debuff for 2 turns. Very solid A1. It's always nice to bring an HP burn debuff for that additional damage. It's nothing crazy like a drop defense or a drop attack, but it's still a very solid A1 for specific fights like the Frostbiter. But yeah, overall very solid A1. On the A2 we have Lordly Embrace. Remove all debuffs from a target ally, then places a block debuffs buff on them for 2 turns and heals that ally by 75% of their max HP. In addition, will heal all other allies by 20% of their max HP and fill their turn meters by 15% if the target is fully healed by the skill on a possible 2-turn cooldown. So pretty much a targeted cleanse with a huge heal along with a block debuffs buff, and if you fully heal that target, you will heal everyone else in your group by 20% of their max HP and fill their turn meter. So very solid A2, even if it's a targeted cleanse rather than an AoE cleanse, it is a pretty huge heal, so most likely you're going to get that additional effect of healing everyone else and turn meter boosting. So overall, very solid A2, especially for things like PvP, where you might have a specific target getting targeted. So yeah, overall, very solid A2. On the A3 we have Aggress. Has a 75 or 100% chance if you book it of removing all buffs from all enemies, then decrease the turn meter of all enemies by 10% and fill turn meters of all allies by 10%, or decrease the turn meter of all enemies by 20% and fill turn meters of all allies by 20% if 5 or more buffs were removed. And you can drop this down to a 3-turn cooldown. Buff strippers are always a nice thing to have, especially for PvP. Now considering the whole 5 or more buffs were removed, this could be very easy just because of AoE buffs in PvP. A lot of people provide 2 each, so you could possibly be removing an easy 8, providing that drop turn meter by 20% and increase ally turn meter by 20%. So very solid A3 overall. Buff strippers, like I said, are very valuable in PvP, but also in PvE for things like Doom Tower. So it being on a 3-turn cooldown is just even better, and 100% chance if you book it, even though booking it isn't necessarily required, just because 75% chance is pretty high. So overall, very solid A3. On the aura we have increased ally resist in battles by 50%. Overall, it's a nice aura to have just because it is all battles, but it is very specific to magic affinity, so not a huge fan of this aura, but it's not horrible. Overall, very good support champion. You have an HP burn for the additional damage, so she is providing some decent damage with her kit. But you do have that targeted cleanse and heal, possible turn meter boost and AoE heal as well, and then you have the buff stripping for things on waves or for PvP, along with turn meter increase and turn meter decrease for the enemy. So overall, her kit is really nice. She's specifically used in PvP typically, but can be very useful in faction wars or things like Doom Tower, like I said, for the buff stripping. And HP burn is actually pretty good for the Frostbiter, obviously, along with the fact that with freezes she can go ahead and cleanse that champion as well and provide that AoE heal. So overall, very solid champion. The next champion we're going to look at is from the Lizardmen. It's going to be an epic, and it's going to be Aox the Rememberer. One of the better epic Lizardmen, especially for the secret room. So on the A1, we're going to have Feathered Staff, attack one enemy 2 times. Each hit has a 10 or 30% chance, if you book it, of placing a 5% poison debuff for 2 turns. Not the highest chance of applying a poison, but this is just one of those additional effects that is nice to have, and it is the big poison version, so overall not a bad A1, but don't rely on this to provide poisons during a battle. On the A2, we have Lore of Restoration. Attack one enemy, heals all allies by 10% of their max HP, and then heals each ally by an extra 2.5% for each debuff on the target, and you can drop this down to a 3-turn cooldown. Overall, very solid solid heal, I should say. Provided that you're bringing a lot of debuffs like drop attack, drop defense, additional poisons, which he does provide on the A1, you can actually get this heal to heal a decent amount. I actually run Aox in my Faction Wars team, and he does very well providing heals enough for the team, so very solid A2. On the A3, we have Weight of Aeons, places a 50% decrease attack debuff on all enemies for 2 turns, also has a 75 or 100% chance, if you book it, of decreasing each enemy's turn meter by 20%, places a 30% decreased crit rate debuff on the target for 2 turns if they have 50% or more turn meter after the turn meter decrease, and you can drop this down to a 3-turn cooldown as well. So with the A2, provided that you get additional heals per debuff on the target, you can possibly provide 2 debuffs here along with some more poison debuffs, so you can actually get the heal by himself up pretty decent. So yeah, very solid A3, providing that AoE decrease attack is always a nice thing, especially in Faction Wars. The decreased crit rate isn't the biggest deal in PvE content, but can definitely help in survival situations. So yeah, very solid A3. Now on the passive, we had Steward of Time, increase the duration of 2 random debuffs on the attacker by 1 turn when attacked, occurs once per hit. Now this is like one of those additional nice to have passives. It's nothing too major. Now a lot of people can use him on clan boss, and he does help extend debuffs, which is always a nice thing for the clan boss, but like I said, it's one of those additional nice to have passives, nothing too major. The aura is a increased ally accuracy in Doom Tower battles by 60. It is targeted toward Doom Tower, unfortunately, but a very solid accuracy buff if you happen to need it. And with Doom Tower and Hard Doom Tower, the accuracy ratings do have to be pretty high, so this could help you put you over that edge. But yeah, overall, very solid epic Lizardmen, especially for the secret room, like I said, but can be very useful like things for Faction Wars. But yeah, overall, very solid epic. Alright, the next champion is going to be a Skinwalker Lego, and it's going to be Hakkorn Smashlord. Actually a Lego that I really want, just for PvP purposes, but let's go ahead and go through it. So he is going to be an HP based champion. So on the A1, we have Inhuman Force, attack one enemy, has a 40 or a 55% chance of placing a stun debuff for 1 turn if you happen to book it. Not the greatest A1. Can be useful in PvP, can be useful in PvE, I guess, if you want to target a specific champion to stun, if you're worried about getting hit by them or you don't want them to use their ability. Not the highest chance at stunning though, only a 55% chance, so not the biggest fan of the A1, but it is, I guess, somewhat useful. On the A2, we have Rallying Bellow, removes all debuffs from all allies, then places a block debuffs buff on all allies for 2 turns, heals all allies by 15% of this champion's max HP, or sorry, not max HP, this champion's HP, and then heals each ally by an extra 10% of this champion's max HP for each debuff removed from them. Now this is going to be on a 4-turn cooldown only. The books are not too helpful, just because it increases the heal by a tiny bit, but overall it was like it's a AoE cleanse along with a heal, additional heals per debuff removed, and you get that block debuff skill or buff. So overall, very solid A2. Can be very useful, can be a huge heal, especially if you're stacking huge HP on him, obviously. So overall, very solid A2, and the main reason why I want him for PvP. On the A3, we have Blood Offering, sacrifices HP equal to 25% of this champion's max HP, then attacks all enemies. Damage inflicted is equal to 50% of this champion's max HP, and this attack is always a normal hit, so you can't crit. or you can't get a weak hit, I guess, more or less as well. The HP sacrifice will happen even if it kills this champion, which is unfortunate, but it does happen. And this can be going on a 4-turn cooldown. Very solid damage based ability. You can't crit, you can't weak hit. So you don't have to worry about those stats when it comes to building him as well, but overall can do some major damage, especially like I said, since you're stacking HP on him. So a nice addition to his support type of abilities. And then on the aura, increase ally HP in dungeons by 33%. Specific to dungeons, HP is always a nice thing to have, especially in progression and stuff like that. So overall, not a bad aura. But yeah, overall, I think he is definitely useful in many areas. Like I said, main reason I want him is for his A2 in PvP, but he can provide decent heals and damage in your faction wars or even in PvE content. He can be used anywhere. But yeah, overall, mainly usually see him in PvP. Alright, the next champion is going to be from the Undead Hordes, and it's going to be an epic by the name of Vogoth. So Vogoth has actually become recently popular in PvP, but yeah, HP based champion. On the A1 we have Horrendous Strength, attack one enemy 3 times, each hit has a 30 or 40% chance if you book it of increasing the duration of a random debuff on the target by 1 turn. Not a big fan of it just because of the fact that the chances are low, along with the fact that it's a random debuff, so it's not every single debuff on the target or anything like that. So not a big fan of the A1. You do get 3 times to proc this extension, I guess, more or less, so there is that, but yeah, not the greatest A1. On the A2 we have Wave of Revulsion, attack all enemies, has a 60 or a 75% chance if you book it of placing a provoke debuff on all enemies for 1 turn. Also has a 60 or a 75% chance if booked of placing a 50% decreased attack debuff for 2 turns on targets who receive the provoke debuff from the skill on a 3-turn cooldown. So 75% chance is a pretty decent chance, along with providing a decreased attack, but in order to get that decreased attack you also have to first place the provoke. So I don't like those types of limitations, but overall a very solid CC type of ability on the A2, especially on a 3-turn cooldown. It's definitely not a bad thing. Now this does work with the A1, right? So when he does use the A1, he can extend the provoke or the decrease attack, so that is nice, but once again the A1 is random, so it's not like it's going to extend the decrease attack and provoke. So unfortunate, but overall very solid A2. For his passive we have Festering Dynamo. Whenever this champion is attacked, heals all allies by 50% of the damage received, only heals by 25% of the damage received from boss attacks. This champion only receives half of the heals that other allies receive, so this is why he's pretty popular in PvP, just because there is so much AoE damage that he's typically hit, and he can pretty much steady out the rest of your team when he's hit like this. So very solid passive, especially for survivability, and he's an HP based champion, so you're just going to be stacking a lot of health. So he's going to provide some pretty decent heals, but overall can be very useful as well with this passive in faction wars, as he's providing a provoke, so he's going to take damage there, providing CC for the waves and AoE heal pretty much because he's getting hit. Now his other passive is Eerie Presence. When attacked, places a leech debuff on the attacker for 2 turns, so the provoke helps proc this. If the attacker is under a provoke, debuff placed by this champion also has a 70 or 100% chance if you book it of increasing the cooldown of a random skill on the attacker by 2 turns, occurs once per attack. Once again, it's a random ability, so it's not like it's all abilities are going to be put on cooldown or increase the cooldown. But yeah, overall not a bad passive. Like, it's one of those additional things, like I said, even with the prior champion, it's a nice to have type of situation, and the leech debuff can be pretty useful when it comes to the rest of your team in sustaining. So yeah. On the aura, we have increased ally accuracy in all battles by 40. Always nice to have in all battles aura, especially with accuracy, where it's getting a little bit more important in PvE content. So very solid aura. Overall can be very useful. Like I said, he's becoming more popular in PvP, but I actually used him to get through 21 faction wars, just because of the fact of the CC and the AoE heal allows you to sustain. So overall, very solid epic. The next champion is actually going to be a Lego and one of the most sought after champions in the game, which is why this 10 times is partially crazy, and it's Bad-el-Kazar. So I'm sure you guys all know Bad-el, but we'll go through his kit. He is a support-based Lego champion from the Undead Horde. So on the A1, we have attack all enemies, heals this champion and all allies by 20% of the damage inflicted. So AoE heal, AoE damage, not like he's going to be used for the A1, but it is an additional heal and damage dealer. On the A2 is what he's known for. Malice removes all debuffs from all allies, so an AoE cleanse, along with placing 2 continuous heal buffs, the big versions, along with the fact that he's also placing 2 big versions of poison on all enemies. And this is going to go down to a 3-turn cooldown. Now, considering he only has 2 active abilities, his A1 and his A2, he is a candidate for the reflex set, which can make him pretty crazy by dropping this down to pretty much a 2 or 1 turn cooldown, sometimes depending on how your masteries are set up. So he can be putting up poisons and cleansing and continuous heals like crazy. So yeah, there's not much more to say about his A2. Now on the passive, we have Prey Upon. All allies inflict 20% more damage against targets under poison debuffs, which he provides. So you're getting that additional damage along with the fact that he's placing those poisons. So overall, great passive. And then his aura, not too great. Increase ally crit rate in all battles by 25%, but can become useful if you happen to not be able to hit that 100% on some champions like a seer or any of your other damage dealers. So can be useful, but not a big fan of ally crit rate in general. Auras, but yeah, overall very solid champion. Not much to say. Everyone wants him, and he just brings so much, right? He can be used in every single piece of content. Not typically seen in PvP, but he is a master of PvE. He can solo dragon. He can solo Ice Golem. He can do a lot. So definitely worth going for if you have the resources to do so. Another crazy champion, which makes this 10 times crazy, is Siphi the Lost Bride. Another crazy sought after champion. Void Lego support. We'll go through her kit real quick. So on the A1, we have Curse of Longing. Attack one enemy, has an 80 or 100% chance if you book it of placing a sleep debuff for 1 turn if the target's turn meter is equal to or above 50%. This debuff cannot be resisted, heals all allies by 5% of their max HP if the target's turn meter is below 50%. So pretty much doesn't need accuracy, provides a sleep to do a CC, and will do that heal if they are below 50%. So if you're not putting those sleep, you're healing everyone. So overall, very solid A1. Can't say much more about this one. On the A2, we have Whirlwind Romance. Very crazy ability. Places a block debuffs buff on all allies for 2 turns, then fills the turn meter of all allies by 10%. Places a 60% increased defense buff and a 30% increased speed buff on all allies for 2 turns on a 4-turn cooldown. Yeah, survivability like crazy, along with that increased speed, just makes this ability very sought after, very useful in every single piece of content, PvP, PvE, faction wars, just everything, right? So pretty crazy ability. On the A3, we have Love Beyond Death. Revives a single ally with 55% HP and a full turn meter. Places a 50% increased attack buff and 30% increased crit rate buff on that ally for 2 turns on a 4-turn cooldown. Even if it's a targeted res, it's providing so much along with it, and 4 turns is really not that bad of a cooldown. So in addition to the rest of her kit, it's just easy, right? And then we have the passive Eternal Bond. Heals each ally by 10% of their max HP at the start of their turn, and then has a 40 or 50% chance if you book it of removing a freeze or fear, so 2 major CC debuffs from each ally at the start of their turn, and will fully cleanse a Rotos if you have them on their team at the start of their turn. So if you have a Rotos, it's a no-brainer to play with Siphi, but otherwise can provide that small little cleanse of the fear or the freeze on the start of your ally's turn. So yeah, one of those nice additional things, right? And then you have the aura, increase ally resistance in all battles by 80. This can be very useful in PvP, PvE Doom Tower, as resist is pretty important in there. And Faction Wars obviously provides so much survivability, provides a res for the 3-star capability of Faction Wars, has that CC on the A1. Like I said, one of the most sought after champions in the game, so having her in a 10 times event is pretty crazy. Unfortunately, we did just have a 2 times void event though, so I'd imagine not a lot of people have voids. So if you are going to go for her, good luck. I hope you guys do get her. She is a pretty crazy champion. And let's go to the next one, which is going to be Rector Drath from the Night Rev, if I can find them. So Rector Drath is the only Reser beyond this fusion that we're doing right now in Night Rev. So pretty much a very sought after champion just for the fact of Faction Wars. But yeah, let's go through the kit. So on the A1, we have attack one enemy has a 35 or a 50% chance if you book it of placing a 50% decreased attack debuff for 2 turns. Very solid A1, especially for survivability. Dropping attack is pretty major when it comes to that. So yeah, overall good A1. On the A2, we have Necro Mutation, heals all allies by 20% of this champion's max HP. So AoE heal, always nice to have. After healing, places a perfect veil buff on for 2 turns on all allies with full HP, so it provides that protection for everyone. So that's always nice. And then places a 15% continuous heal buff for 1 turn instead on all allies with less than 100% HP. So you're providing that continuous heal to further heal them, hopefully to 100% later, if you don't fully heal them with the initial heal. And this can go down to a 4-turn cooldown. So a very nice thing to have just in general with PvE content. But for PvE Faction Wars specifically, this is always a nice thing to have just for that survivability factor. On the A3, we have the Spirit Form, which is the res for her, or him, for it. We have a 4-turn cooldown. If booked, revives a single ally with 60% HP and fills a turn meter by 60%, places a perfect veil buff on them for 3 turns. So provides that little safety net of a perfect veil. But this 60% HP and turn meter fill is a very, it's actually on the bigger side of most reses. So overall, very, very good ability. And like I said, is key ability to 3-star Faction Wars. So on the passive, we have Master of Ghost passive. Obviously, it's a passive, I just said that. Whenever an ally under a veil or perfect veil buff gets a turn, heals them by 10% of their max HP. Also increases the resistance of allies under veil or perfect veil by 50. Will only increase res or resistance once per ally if there are multiple Rectors on the team. Most likely you're not going to have multiple. And I do want to make a note about this passive. This massively slows down runs just because there is an animation that goes along with this heal. So unfortunately that is a thing, but overall, if you can get past that, it's a great passive. They provide a veil or perfect veil with their kit, so you are typically getting that 10% heal for everyone when they take a turn, and the extra resistance is always a nice thing to have. So in addition to that passive, you also have an aura for Doom Tower ally resist, so you can provide almost 105 resist just with Rector if they are in your lead slot. So can be very solid in Doom Tower if it comes down to you needing some extra resistance. But yeah, overall solid kit. Drop attack on the A1, AoE heal on the A2 along with perfect veil, a res on the A3, and passive heals with veil or perfect veil being placed. So overall, not a bad champion to have in general for PvE or PvP content, but is like almost needed for PvE or for Faction Wars, I should say, just for that res, as they are the only reser in Night Rev. And the last champion we're going to go ahead and look at is going to be from the Dwarves faction, and it is going to be Dazdurk. Where is he? Runekeeper Dazdurk. One of the coolest looking champions, and I am biased because I love Dwarves. But yeah, on the support side of the dwarves, we have on the A1 Siphon symbol, attack one enemy has a 35 or 45% chance if you book it of placing a leech debuff for 2 turns. Leech, always a nice thing for sustain, so I'm always a big fan of when a champion has a leech debuff. Nothing crazy like a decreased defense or decreased attack, but very useful. On the A2, we have Rune of Battle, places a 50% increased attack buff on all allies for 2 turns, and then fills turn meter of all allies by 25% on a 3-turn cooldown. So, make your people go faster, supports your attack-based champions. Always a nice ability to have just to make your allies take more turns. On the A3, we have Purity Sigil, removes all debuffs from all allies, then heals all allies by 25% of this champion's max HP. That can be major just because you're probably going to be stacking HP for that survivability and that extra heal amount on this champion. And then places a 15% continuous heal buff on for 2 turns on all allies that have debuffs removed on a 4-turn cooldown. I personally use this guy in Nether Spider to remove all the poisons, get that major heal, and get that continuous heal out there. On a 4-turn cooldown, it's not the fastest cleanse, AoE heal and whatnot, but definitely an efficient heal. So overall, very good ability on the A3. And then we have the aura, increase ally attack in all battles by 25%. Not a big fan of the aura on this guy specifically just because he is a support based champion. Now obviously he does provide the increased attack buff on the A2 as well. So he is meant to be paired with your attack based champions, but overall it's just a weird aura to have on him. But yeah, he can be definitely useful in PvE content. Like I said, I use him in Doom Tower for the Nether Spider, but he can be pretty major in faction wars as well, as he provides that AoE heal, that extra turn meter boost along with the increased attack, considering a lot of dwarves are attack based champions, so there is that. And then you have that additional sustain with the leech possibility on the A1. So overall, very solid void champion to get if you can. It can do wonders for your faction crypts. But yeah, overall, those are all the champions involved in the 10 times event. Do I think it's worth summoning during this event? I think some of these champions are obviously worth it, right? You have Bad-el, you have Siphi, but you even have other champions like Sethallia, Aox, like pretty much everyone is definitely useful in this 10 times event and can do pretty crazy things in addition to your account, depending on where you are. Like I said, with all 10 times events, make sure you're looking at your account and seeing if it's actually worth summoning. But with the fusion going on, if you're going to be participating in the summons rush anyway, yeah, just look at your resources and see if it's worth summoning. In my opinion, I would definitely do it if you have them, just because there are champions that can definitely be game changers. So yeah, that is it. Hope you guys liked the video. Let me know if you guys will be summoning during this event or if you guys are totally skipping it. But yeah, I will talk to you guys later. See you.